Lisa Ventura has an MBE and she's the founder of Cybersecurity Unity. There are only two of the things that she's done that are fantastic. Lisa is also a very vocal advocate for neurodiversity and supporting people with neurodiversity that work in tech or just work anywhere, really. The posts that she puts up on LinkedIn are always very much humanizing neurodiversity. So if you know nothing about it, it's a great way to understand how people feel and how you should work to support and help them when you can. So learn some more. We'll get stuck into the details now. Today, then, I'm talking to Lisa Ventura, multi-award winning, holder of an MBE, and all-around awesome person who I follow intently on LinkedIn. Primarily, I have to say, because of your experiences around being a neurodivergent in the world and being so vocal about it as somebody who's, you know, very shiny and new to it. It's always a confidence builder to see other people speaking so openly about it. But you're very welcome today, Lisa, and I'm excited to start to get stuck into learning a little bit more about you.
It's wonderful to be here, Jennifer. Thank you for asking me today to join on this talk with you.
Yay. So your journey into cybersecurity is what we love to call a squiggly path. Like you had a career in entertainment before then, which in my mind couldn't be further apart from what we would stereotype as cybersecurity. How did that happen for you? And was some of your old skills useful in the new world?
Absolutely. So I did indeed spend a number of years in the entertainment industry. I worked with Chris Tarrant of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fame, and saw that as a game show format go stratospheric in terms of, you know, it just went all over the world as a format. It was beating, you know, the major soap operas like EastEnders and so on in the ratings. You know, it was absolutely huge. And then I got to a point around about 2008, 2009, where I thought, feel I've gone about as far as I can with this. I've had an incredible time over the years working with Chris, and I got to get involved in negotiating a lot of his contracts, a lot of the things that he did, such as his Capital Radio Breakfast show, such as Millionaire, Tarot on TV, all that stuff that he did. And I felt I'd gone about as far as I could with that. And Millionaire was on a bit of a downward trajectory, which is typical with a lot of these kind of shows.
Yeah.
And at the time, my ex-wife was very high up as a ethical hacker penetration tester, and did a lot of high-profile government work and work with the MOD and so on. And I was always fascinated with as much as she could tell me in terms of, obviously she had to adhere to the Official Secrets Act and so on. But I was always fascinated about, you know, hacking and the mind of a hacker and the psychology of hacking and why people fall for, you know, social engineering stuff and phishing emails and things like that. And when she invented a software tool in her spare time, called Nipper Studio, I then joined the business that we had together back then. And that was my first foray into cybersecurity and my kind of step away, if you like, from the entertainment industry. I got as involved as I could and learned really, really quickly about as many different facets of cybersecurity as possible. And the software tool that she'd invented scans routers, networks, and firewalls, looks at the configuration files within, and produces a report of any vulnerabilities that it finds. So it essentially cuts down the time of doing a manual penetration test for what would take up to, say, 1 or 2 days, down to a matter of minutes. And it's fair to say that this software tool went absolutely like wildfire. So much interest in it. And back then as well, I was very fortunate to meet Dr. Emma Philpott, who went on to obviously found the IASME Consortium. And of course, IASME now has the remit from the NCSC to roll out Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. But I met Dr. Emma Philpott, and she was kind of an unofficial mentor, if you like. I just learned so much from Emma, and I was also a founder member of the first cybersecurity cluster in the UK, the Malvern Cybersecurity Cluster, which is now Midlands Cyber. And of course, we have a whole network of clusters that are overseen by UKC3. When my ex and I decided to separate and we subsequently divorced, I knew that I wanted to stay within cybersecurity. So I went to work at BT and worked on their and project managed their Assure cyber product, which was quite similar to Nipper Studio back at the time that I was there. And while I was with BT as well, I started looking, around at the cybersecurity industry in general. And bear in mind, I'm going back now to about 2012, 2013. And while it was talked about a lot, it certainly wasn't as, on everybody's radar as it kind of is today. And I looked around and I thought, we don't have a dedicated trade association for cybersecurity. We, of course, have CSEC, which had information security as part of it. We had the UK IT Association at the time. There is, of course, the British Computing Society, of which I'm a member today. But cyber was a part of those organisations. There wasn't one dedicated body for cybersecurity. And so I launched the UK Cybersecurity Association as that first dedicated trade body for cybersecurity. And it's now rebranded to be called Cybersecurity Unity. And the reason for that rebrand is I started seeing, and a lot of the feedback I was getting from members as well, is that there's a lot of great work being done within the cybersecurity industry today, but it can be incredibly siloed. And I think for those that, those smaller businesses and maybe even those smaller size SMEs, who even today still don't think they need to have cybersecurity on their radar. I think a big part of that is because they just, don't sort of understand it and understand the need for it, but also there's so much information out there and so many different things going on. And I think they just sort of look at it and think, oh, this is too much for us. And it's very much a head in the sand approach. So the idea behind the rebrand to Cybersecurity Unity was to foster that greater collaboration, to bring all the different entities and everyone together that's working within the cybersecurity industry and saying, do you know what, there's no competition and there's certainly no perceived competition. We all want the same things and there's room for everybody. So let's all get together and let's all have a look at what are the challenges, what are the new threats, what are the key things that are going on, in our industry, and how can we collaborate better to, address some of those challenges. And there's no way we're going to overcome all of them. New threats are coming out, as you know, every second of every single day. But I think that as an industry, by coming together and collaborating better and sharing that best practice, sharing that information, sharing that threat analysis and so on, that can really go a long way towards fostering that greater collaboration in the cybersecurity industry.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned collaboration there, because for me, I guess the next question is, when you're looking at that, like you've gone outside of that insular sort of one country view, when you're looking at global cybersecurity today, then what do you think is the most pressing issue, and how can that collaboration effort help address it?
Absolutely. So I think there's a number of different issues and challenges within the cybersecurity industry today. Obviously, things like ransomware and phishing and zero trust insider threats, and that they're all just growing exponentially every day. And as I mentioned before, new threats are coming out practically every single second. I also think that there's this one is, for me, is probably a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I see AI perhaps helping but also hindering. And I think that if, like anything else, if used in the right way, it can help. But hackers are going to get hold of it and they're going to use it to be able to foster greater, attacks and use it to that effect. So I heard even last week that there's been a new piece of malware that's AI driven, out there as well. So I'm looking at that, really closely. And I think, as I mentioned in my just now, that greater collaboration to address those challenges. I think it's about removing barriers and removing perceived competition. And as I said, there's room for everybody. We all want the same things. And I see a lot of success when we collaborate better as an industry. And I think as well, a big part of what we do at Cybersecurity Unity is to promote all those great organizations and so on that are out there. So, as I mentioned, those small businesses and smaller size, SMEs that might need help with their cybersecurity and cybersecurity posture, but have no idea where to turn to. We're creating an overarching knowledge hub of everything going on within the cybersecurity industry, and also having that to mapping tool so organizations know where to go. So, for example, those smaller businesses that might need help could get in touch with their local cyber resilience center, all police led, and the advice and support that those centers give are all free. So for those businesses that are looking for that support, great. Have a look at the Cyber Resilience Centre network and get in touch with the one for your local area. It could be that you're looking to transition into a career in cybersecurity. Great, here's the UK Cybersecurity Council. And by the way, they've got a brilliant career mapping tool that could help you with the particular area of cybersecurity that you want to get into, and also help you with finding that career pathway and the right avenue for you, because as you know, there's no one size fits all. And then if that you're an organization, but you need some more technical help with your cybersecurity, great. The NCSC is there and available to help. And perhaps if you're looking for your local cybersecurity cluster, UKC3 have got all the details of all the clusters and all that work that's going on in the UK. If you're looking for certifications, there's things like IC Squared, ISACA, BCS and so on, all those organizations that are all doing great work, and it really needs shouting about, I think, a whole lot more.
Absolutely. And even on the certifications and training, what I'm seeing in the last few years is more and more of it is free or discounted, or heavily discounted at least, because some of it was encouraging people to get into the industry, but some of it was simply about giving people the base skills that they need, especially for those smaller businesses, because they're not going to have tens of thousands to invest in training for them, and it's a part of what they do. It's not all of what they do in
Absolutely.
those smaller cases. So it's great to be able to get the training from there. I mentioned in the beginning that one of the reasons that I've been connected with you and following you for the most part on LinkedIn is because of how you speak so openly about being a neurodivergent and how you manage that, and actually not just the positives, but you shared the negatives of things that happen then too. And you advocate a lot then for neurodivergence in the world of cybersecurity. Would you feel comfortable sharing your experience about, how you got diagnosed and what that meant to you and how it's influenced your career?
Absolutely. So I'll, for full disclosure, I actually wasn't seeking a diagnosis at the time I was diagnosed in 2018. And in fact, it just wasn't even on my radar at all. I just got through life. I was heavily masking, although I didn't realize how much I was heavily masking until I was diagnosed. And it came about because it was May 2018. And I'd actually gone to my GP because I'd been bitten on my arm, of all places, and it had gone horrible. So I'd gone to the GP. She gave me a prescription for antibiotics. And then on the way out, she said, "Oh, would you mind taking part in a survey that Worcestershire Healthy Minds is doing? Because they're looking into undiagnosed autism in women between the ages of 40 and 45. And at the time, I hit both criteria. And thinking absolutely nothing of it.
That didn't feel subtle at all. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm laughing because that feels like a really unsubtle way of telling you she thinks you have it. Sorry, carry on.
It could be, absolutely. And she said, "Would you mind taking part in the study?" I said, "No, not at all." And she printed out what I now know was the DSM 50 question initial screening tool for autism. And she said, "Would you mind filling out and handing it into reception?" So I went out, I filled it in, gave it in, thought nothing of it. And then I'm literally dishing out dinner in the evening on the same day, and the landline phone rings. And it's the GP I'd seen in the morning, and she said, "You've scored very highly for the potential of having autism, and those that are leading the study are now really keen to meet you. Would you be open to that?" So again, not thinking sort of too much of it, I said, "Oh, yeah, of course, I'd be happy to." And it was literally arranged for the following week, and I went to Stoddard Kennedy House in Worcester, where I met with 4 or 5 different people that were involved in the study. And I spent around another 4 odd or so hours with them, a lot more questions and activities, delving into my childhood experiences and so on. And at the end of it all, they concluded without any doubt at all that I was definitely autistic.
Wow.
And it was like a light bulb had gone off at some of the things that they were talking to me about. And it's like, that's why I struggled so much in an office environment. That's why I struggle so much with relating to people. That's why eye contact for me is literally physically painful. There were just all these different things that light bulbs were just going off, and my entire life up to that point just made so much sense. It was unbelievable. But as you do, you start reading up, you start sort of looking into it a lot more. And I realized that I didn't think that I was just autistic, because I'd come across ADHD by this point, and I found I ticked a lot of the boxes for ADHD as well. So I was going in early 2020, I was going to ask for a referral for an ADHD assessment, but the pandemic hit. So I didn't ask for this until 2021. And because of my autism diagnosis, I was referred, but I was told, "Oh, it could be years to wait, it'll be a long time," and so on. And then I got to early January 2021, and I finally, out of the blue, get a phone call to say I'd reached the top of the list for an ADHD assessment. And I went back to the same place for that. And sure enough, I was diagnosed again without a shadow of a doubt with ADHD, and also had my autism diagnosis reconfirmed. And the way that I like to think of it is because I've always been told all my life that I'm difficult. Why can't I change to fit in with this? Why can't I do that? Why, am I so difficult? Why can't I just? And it's like, no, I'm different. I'm not difficult. And that's the thing that I really, push in terms of the whole neurodiversity piece.
Yeah.
And when I was diagnosed, that was the point I realized, actually, I now get why I so got into cybersecurity, which, to be fair, was through my ex-wife, but I understand why I got into it, so much, and why I'm so passionate about it. And I think yourself, there's so many studies that have been done that show that those of us that are neurodivergent are really well suited to careers in cybersecurity, because
Yeah.
we have that level of hyper focus and hyper attention to detail. And if we're looking at big long lines of code, we will spot that full stop that will stop that code working. For example, we will find it.
Yeah.
So and that for me, really shows just how well suited we are to careers in the cybersecurity industry.
Absolutely. I mean, I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying there, but that's like, I love that your response to it is positive. I'm sure it wasn't all positive, but where you're saying, it's like a light bulb moment. Now things start to make sense to me. And I know that a lot of people feel that when they get their diagnosis. And something I remember being warned about when I got mine for ADHD was, you may go through a period of mourning for the
Yeah.
life you could have had prior to your diagnosis. And this is in particular for people that are late diagnosed.
Yeah.
I never did, because I think for me, I was at a stage in my life where I was quite happy. Everything was going really well. And I felt like if I go back and mourn for the things that I could have done differently, I may not have ended up where I was at that particular point, where I'm quite happy. So, I can look at things and go, oh, that might have been different if we'd have known. But let's be
Yeah.
real. When I was a child, there was barely resources available for the hyperactive boys that were bouncing off the walls and obviously had it. Definitely not for those of us that were masking well and not being found. So there's no point in deluding myself into thinking, oh, back then I would have had the resources and things would have been different. that didn't happen because I was diagnosed now. The resources didn't happen then. So did you go through a period of mourning out of
I,
curiosity?
I did to start with, and in fact, my first thought when I got my autism diagnosis was, despite all the sort of light bulb moments of that explains why I'm like this and that explains why I'm like that, I always had that sort of thing in my head of that morning of how much better my life might have been if I'd had that support,
Mm,
if I'd had that understanding. For me, it started even well before, even well before school. I endured quite a level of bullying and abuse from the moment I walked through the school gates, and that theme continued right throughout my lifetime. And I've also done a lot of work and research into the correlation between those of us who are neurodivergent and the fact that we are far more likely to experience significant levels of bullying and abuse, not just in the workplace, but in all areas of our lives. And for me, it started in the home well before I went to school. And it was always things like, why can't you be like your cousins? Why can't you
yeah.
dress pretty? Why do why do you want to play with your, scare electrics and not dolls and things like, things like that. And I know that I wasn't what my parents wanted. And that
Yeah.
feeling was there from a very, very young age, that I had to be this particular way to make them and everybody else around me happy. I had to dress in the pretty dresses. I
Mm,
had to wear jewelry. I had to, be a certain way. I had to talk a certain way. And the analogy that I use is I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. And I could never get, and the analogy is for me is the original series of Star Trek, and there's always usually a bit at the end where Captain Kirk and Spock, and they're all having a bit of a laugh and
yeah.
a joke, but Spock is just there going like that, and you can
You're
just
right.
see, yeah, and he's just like, I don't get, I don't get it, and they're all having this laugh, and that is me. I'm laughing at things sometimes, but I'm actually there going, I'm laughing because I feel I should. I
Yeah.
don't actually
You get it.
necessarily get why I'm laughing. And that's the level of masking that I did. I masked so heavily. And I felt like I was a real chameleon to fit whatever situation that I was in, and that I had to be that particular person. I had to be that perfect daughter, that perfect wife, the perfect friends, the perfect employee, or the perfect business person, whatever it was. I was a chameleon to every single situation that I was in.
I that story, as you're talking, I realized that, oh my God, I lived for Star Trek when I was little. Even more so than Star Wars. People always ask you
Yeah.
to choose between the two, and I'm like, I quite like Star Wars as well. Like,
Mhm.
but I used to love the one with the dolphin. Sea Quest, was it called?
Oh, oh yes, yes, I
Loved
know.
that.
Yeah,
But in Star Trek, both Spock and Data were by far my favorite all the way through.
me
And
too.
when you're saying that, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot that. Like, I totally forgot they were my favorite. And I remember, like, when I was little, so I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I see my kids and my niece and my brother and different people with diagnosis. There's definitely autistic tendencies, but I haven't saw that yet. When I look back at certain things, I think because my parents parented 6 children, that everything was just like, okay, well, that's just how she does it. So it never kind of came up because there wasn't the energy to look into it in any great detail. They ran their own business at the time and then had the 6 kids. And when I think back, one of my favorite things to do, and both my brothers as well, one is not diagnosed, one is, was to get the little, the Matchbox cars, or dinky cars, my husband calls
Yes,
them, because it's an age thing. He's a bit older than me. But I used to line them up. My brothers, between the two of them, probably had about 60 or 70 of these cars. And our house used to have, you'd go into a front hall, you'd go through a kitchen, and then there was an extension at the back. So there was this big, long kind of corridor as such. And we used to line up those cars and move them from one end of the house to the other. And you'd move one about 6 inches, and then you'd move the second one, and then the third one. And you go all the way down to all 70 odd cars, and then you go up to the front, and you move it about 6 inches, and you do it again. And when I look back, I'm like, how did we not know? How did we not know?
yeah.
And never mind all the games that we had. That was the stuff we used to play with.
For For me, if, on the special interest front, oh my goodness. So from the moment I was born, I was absolutely and utterly fascinated with the rock band Queen and Freddie Mercury.
That's a cool
And
fascination to have.
and I mean, even to this day, Freddie remains. Don't tell my husband, but Freddie remains the love of my life. To coin the name of the Queen song.
Yeah.
And I'm just so Queen and Freddie are just my all-time favorite ever. But I had an interest that was probably beyond what's considered the normal. So I knew every single line to every song. I knew every single album, the discography, the tour years, everything that I could possibly sort of know. To the point that if I went on Mastermind, it might well be specialist subject, Freddie Mercury and Queen. That's the level of it. But I hid it, and I also hid a lot of my other interests as well. I don't know if you can see. I mean, I don't hide them now because you can see behind me. I've got a poster called "Protect and Survive," and that was around the. I developed a huge interest in all things to do with nuclear war and the Cold War period of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. And that was triggered when I was 15, when we were made to watch a BBC docudrama called Threads at school, which depicted what would happen in the event of a nuclear attack on the UK. And ever since then, I was just absolutely fascinated with it and the subject. And that's why I've got the poster behind me, because that's the government information book that was distributed to every household in the early 80s to tell them how to make their houses safe from nuclear attack. Spoiler, not very much, because things like whitewashing your windows and putting your mattress up against the door isn't going to do anything against
the
a
iodine
nuclear
tablet or something, wasn't it? That because we got stuff like that. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. But I hid all those interests. I never, talked about them. I never, told anybody about them. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've embraced since my diagnosis is like, I love that, all this sort of stuff. I love Queen and Freddie Mercury. I love sci-fi. I love all these things. And I talk about them, really openly now. I don't hide them anymore.
I love that. I listen to people's special interests all day, even if it's not something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
There's something about watching somebody who's so passionate about something, going into finite details. It's their energy that fascinates me, and I'll be glued to them going, oh my God, like to feel that excited, because I do about many things. And then I go, yeah, I'm over it now.
Yeah, same.
I feel that excited about things. It's an energy. I'm like, give it to me. Give me your energy. I want more of that. Tell me more about my son's case. Bridges. Tell me all about the bridges.
Do you know my latest one is the TV series House, which I've only not long just discovered with Hugh Laurie. Oh my goodness, I've just got to the end of series 8 and I was so sad when we got to the end of it. And I actually said to my husband, we have to start it again from the beginning. I loved it so much. And I'm all about House and delving into all of that. But like you say, you get to a point when you go, yeah, that's it. I'm over that now. What's the next thing? Yeah.
Overnight. Like I had the X-Files when I was younger. I was absolutely obsessed with it. And I would do and Take That it was for me, which is probably a lot less cool, but still. But I would not only know all the words to the songs, I'd know, like I used to get up at 6:30 in the morning if they were on a breakfast TV show to record them, and then I'd watch that 10 minutes they were on it over and over and over, and I'd learn their birthdays and their interests and all about where their backgrounds. Oh my gosh, like just at the time I was same as too mortified to actually admit how much information I knew and how into it I was. But I would be completely absorbed by it until I get to the point where I'm like, yeah, no. All right now. What's next? I love it. I love the energy that comes with it. You talk all the time about the importance of mental health and then addressing burnout, especially when you're in the tech industry, because you and I both know cyber specifically moves and changes so fast. There's so much to keep up with on the information side of things. What is it that you think companies should do to do better for people that are, especially, well, for all their employees, but most especially for those that are neurodivergent?
I think for me is being able to play to the strengths of each individual, and also working with them to establish, are there core times that you feel they can work better? Are they better working remotely, working from an office, or working as a hybrid, a mixture of the two? And also, even things like ensuring, downtime in between, calls and things. For me, that's really important, because if I'm on back to back to back to back calls all day, and there are some times I can't escape that, it's really important for me to have that sort of bit of a downtime, after such days, like that. Even just this today that I'm doing with you, I made sure I had no calls before it, and I have no calls for a good hour or so afterwards, just to have that decompression time, and that time to myself, just to make sense of what we've just been talking about, make sure actions are done, make sure I have a good understanding of priorities, and so on. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that I would like to see is organizations supporting the well-being of their employees by looking at the individuals and playing to the strengths of those individuals. And one of the things that I would love to see, although I do appreciate that from some of the conversations I've had, people might not be confident disclosing any of this in their, and I hate the term probationary period, but that's obviously what it is. I would love to see some sort of, I guess, individual sort of passport or manifesto that states, hi, my name is, whatever, and these are the things that I need to be able to, perform for you, i.e. the organization, and to be, my best. So it could list all those, things that people, need to help them be the best that they can be, in their, in their day-to-day jobs and what they're doing. And I don't just mean that this could be for those that are neurodivergent. This could be something for everyone. That we're all going to have our nuances and things that we're going to respond to better, or that will make life easier and better for us in the workplace. And I would love to see something like that rolled out. And I would love to see people not being afraid to say those things even early on, where they might be worried too because they're still in their probationary period. That for me would be a huge step in the right direction.
That's when they need it the most. I was talking to a guy last week, and he was saying to me, how do I, like, if I'm interviewing somebody, how can I find out that they need the additional, help? Because I'm not allowed to ask them, if they're neurodivergent. And I was kind of thinking about it for a minute, and I looked at him and I said, you should assume everybody is neurodivergent. Then you don't have to ask them for help. You come, you begin, whether it's your first interview, your first meeting, or on probation, I put it, the way I would phrase it is, you create a menu. If there's things you've already done for people in the past, then you should make those things available for everybody else. And even if somebody's not neurodivergent, because I'm sure you have, and definitely I have, met those people that are like, she gets to sit in the corner just because, heck off. But if that's something they want, let them sit in the frigging corner. If it makes them happy and they feel equal with the rest of us, then fine, go on. But don't take away what I need, because they're all getting all up in arms about it. So, and one thing I found as well when I was diagnosed, the first thing my boss said to me is, okay, well, what can we do to help? And I went, I don't know. I've spent 43 years like this. I don't know what I need.
Exactly.
Tell me what's on offer. And I've come across different companies that do that they will actually kind of list what's on offer. So I said to him, create a list of what you've already provided and do some research on what could be useful for people in interviews. It might be that they need extra time, that they, you cut paste your questions into the browser if you're doing them remotely, or that they are done remotely and not in person, or camera on, camera off, those kind of things. So, but offer them to everybody. It's none of your business whether they are or they aren't neurodivergent, but it's everybody benefits from you offering these little tools and, accommodations, regardless of where they sit on any spectrum or any wheel or any way you want to measure it from there. And he looked so confused. I remember looking at me going, like, almost like, you ever say something to somebody like, oh, that's too hard, I'm not doing that. They walk away. That's the kind of vibe I got off. And I'm like, it's actually easier to do that. It's there for everybody. But I know, one person at a time, I guess, is how it's going to change.
Absolutely.
But you've written books, right? And articles. You've done a lot of work around women in the cybersecurity side. Is there more that you think that the industry can do with regards to bridging that gender gap, or at least the diversity gap in general? Like, would you have advice that you give to any women coming into the field?
So just to touch on if there's any more we can do to bridge the gender gap, it's getting better. but I still don't think it's where it should be. There are more women coming into cyber, but I think we still need to attract a lot more to come in. And one of the biggest things that I've seen, and I've also talked to a lot of women that were looking to enter the industry, and a lot of them will say to me, but it doesn't seem like it's a particularly welcoming industry. It doesn't seem that it's for me. And when I delve into that a bit further, it's because of a lot of the colors and the imagery.
Mm.
So we have a lot of blue within
Yeah.
our industry. We also have a lot of imagery of the script kiddies with the hoodie huddled over the laptop and so on, and then the padlocks, which give very much a keep out sort of message, and that's very much the feedback that I've got is it just doesn't seem to be a very sort of welcome industry where you and I know it
Oh my
absolutely
God,
is.
yeah.
We're in it, and we absolutely know. I mean, I've got so many people that have been such an incredible support to me within with cybersecurity ever since I've been in it. But I can see how other women might have that perception. So that is one thing I would love to see more is what can we do to get over some of this imagery, get over the shields, the padlocks, the script kiddie with with the hoodie over the laptop kind of thing.
Mm.
I think that would be a good first step to overcoming the gender gap. And in terms of advice giving, to give to more young women looking to enter the field, we're nice. We are supportive. We are all here to help you. We don't have this, keep out thing at all. So that's one of the biggest, pieces of advice that I would give. And also find the niche and the thing that you like, the most in cybersecurity and focus on that. And again, one of the analogies that I like to give is if somebody's looking at trying to get into to medicine, obviously they just don't go into medicine. There's lots and lots of different facets to it. You might want to be a pediatrician or a neurologist or a general practitioner or a cardiologist, a surgeon, whatever it is. There's lots and lots of different facets to going into the medical industry. Cybersecurity is exactly the same. There's threat hunting, there's penetration testing, cyber awareness, and so on. There's so many different facets. So look and find the thing that you would be most comfortable in and find your niche within the industry.
And I have yet to like, I reach out to people all the time and I'm like, hey, any chance you can hop on a call for 15 minutes? I have questions about what you do or your company or whatever. And people generally say yes. I was surprised the first time I did it because, they have rejection problem. But yeah, people are fantastic. And if they love what they do, they're always going to want to talk about it. Something that you've talked about, and we mentioned it briefly there earlier on the personal life side of things, was about the bullying side of stuff. So workplace bullying and, of course, adversity, they're things that you talk about all the time.
Yeah.
How do you think your experiences with that have affected your leadership style? And, do you have any advice for anybody who might be finding themselves in those situations right now?
So, as you rightly said, it is something I talk about a lot. And it is something that I've experienced throughout my entire lifetime. And I think that experiencing that was what led me to being that, what I call sort of social chameleon and
Mm.
changing to fit whatever situation that I was in. And I think subliminally and subconsciously, I'm thinking if I change myself to be whatever anybody wants me to be in that particular moment, then I won't get bullied and I won't get targeted.
Yeah.
And I've had it every which way that you can think of. I've been sidelined. I've been passed up for promotion in my career as well. I've been subjected to comments and micromanagement, almost as if it's like, oh, we can't trust the neurodivergent person to do their job, so we'll micromanage to the 8th degree to make sure that she can do it, which I absolutely and utterly hate. I've got I just the things that I could tell you, honestly, it would just you'd be amazed. One of the things that I will tell you that did happen to me with Cybersecurity Unity, and it was with somebody that was working with me on it. All I will say is I had a complaint that I was investigating about this particular person. And when I told this person that they would need to refrain from doing any work for the association while it was carried out, and a third party was being brought in to talk to the person concerned and talk to the person that made the complaint. What happened after that was some screenshots of a WhatsApp conversation that we'd had where I was talking openly about my autism diagnosis was shared around the entire advisory board, saying, do we really want this woman running the association because she's autistic and therefore mentally unwell? And it just and it just escalated. They were targeted with email after email after email around how I shouldn't be running the association because of my autism diagnosis. And I was also called the Worcester Mafia in one of those emails, which I consider to be a racial slur because I come from an Italian background. And suffice it to say, it was we had an emergency meeting the next day where this person was unequivocally removed from the association. But that whole experience, hit me really, really hard. And I was coming out of cybersecurity at that point. And that's just one example. Another one is and I've also seen firsthand when you get a change of management and leadership, how you get on so well with that person and then they leave and somebody else comes in. And that happened to me as well, where from the start, I was micromanaged by that person to the 8th degree, told outright, that's not up to my standard, that's rubbish, that's no good, sort that out, do this, do that. And it just really, really brings you down. I was messaged on Teams at all times of day and night of, do this now, but it's like, well, it's 7:30 at night, this is my time, now I'm not gonna do this now. And it came to a head because I was on a Teams call with this person and the rest of the team where I was. And the CEO at the time had this thing of he had to go around to everybody individually and say, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? And I'd just come off the back of a particularly bad weekend involving an incident with my dad who has autoimmune dementia. So I'm sat there like, do I be authentic and say, actually, I've not had a great weekend and this has happened and just sort of try to it? Or do I just go, yeah, great weekend and leave it at that? For better or worse, I decided I would be authentic. So it came to my turn. I said, I've not had a particularly great weekend. I've been dealing with my dad who's got autoimmune dementia, but hey, it's a new week, new start, and let's get going. And that's how I did it. As soon as we finished the meeting, this person rang me on Teams. You shouldn't have said that about your dad with autoimmune dementia because that could have been potentially very triggering for somebody that's also dealing with dementia. Make sure you never mention anything like that again. And I was so shocked. I was like, okay, fine, did it that. Later in the day, we're on another call and there was 3 of us and she was supposed to join. She was 10 minutes late. We're nearly about to jump off this Teams call because we think she's not coming. When she does come in, she goes, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late, but I've just had the best news. My son, who's 16, has just got his first job and I'm such a proud mother. Well, I had to turn off my camera at that point because I thought, I cannot let her see how angry I am at this moment, because what she didn't know is I lost my only son to stillbirth. So at that moment, when she's gushing about, which she's got every right to do, she's, talking about how, proud she is of her son. And, if my son had lived, I'd be exactly the same. But he was my only son. I thought, you have got no idea how potentially, if we're going to go down this triggering route, how potentially triggering that was for me. And I actually resigned. I got a sick note to cover my month and I never went back from that moment. I thought, no, I'm not dealing with that level of bullying. And that's the experiences that I've had in the workplace.
Because that was going to be my next question. Like, what do you do? You mentioned, I mean, you're not going to resign in every instance. And a lot of it's going to be down to how much you trust HR to be able to look after your best interest. But I think
Yeah.
if somebody's going to ask a question on a meeting about how your weekend went, and if they're worried that people are going to have bad weekends or that it's going to be triggering for somebody else, they should simply add an extra sentence in that goes, I want you to feel authentic. So everybody be prepared that not everybody has a great weekend. And if you haven't, I'd like to know about it. And if you have, I'd like to know about it. But it's
Exactly.
like the trigger
Yeah.
warning. If you want
Yeah.
people to be authentic, they're not going to tell you everything is shiny, happy, awesome, because
Yeah.
that's not authentic. I don't know about you, but definitely for every 24 hours of my day, I'm not jumping around with rainbows and sunshine.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people, I often find that when people share things like that, more often than not, there's somebody on the call who is grateful for hearing about the challenges, that everybody's weekend isn't shiny and sunny, that somebody else is struggling with something, and maybe they're not comfortable saying it, but they're struggling with something and they're not alone then. And
Yeah.
I think both of them were shitheads who dealt with it really badly, not gonna lie. Just throwing it out there. I don't think it's hard to be human. And I think people often respond in those kind of ways because they're afraid of how they're going to be perceived, that they're somehow going to be less powerful or less capable by showing some little tiny slivers of humanity or compassion towards people, where the reality is you're going to be seen as much more capable and powerful by doing that. And I just don't understand. I don't live in 1985 anymore. We all have been through certainly a very few traumatic years where I thought we all learned that the humanity should be at the core of everything we do, but maybe not. Oh my gosh, I love those stories, not just because they're dramatic. Because sometimes you're like, oh, I love hearing all that. What I mean is, I love the authenticity of it. People need to hear those things, and some people don't understand that they're being bullied as well. When those things are happening, they assume, maybe it's somebody's first time in a workplace, it's first time in that particular workplace or in that industry, and they're thinking, okay, this must just be how it is. Like a given in catering was that, sexual assault and inappropriate conversation is a given in catering and in working in bars, and you may just suck it up and get on with it. That's just how it is. But why? Why is that how it is? Why does that have to be the norm? Why are people not allowed to say it? So, you saying about your experiences and telling your stories, and I'm sure rehashing it is not always the most positive experience for you, but it's teaching so many people as well out there that the experience that they're having is not and should not be the norm, and that they can make decisions, whether it's leaving or taking it to HR to help themselves or speaking to somebody who's experienced it. Sometimes you just need to know that you're not
alone.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to be said for it.
And in terms of some advice for those that might be, having similar challenges, if they think that they are being, targeted with bullying and abuse in the workplace, aside from the obvious, can you report it to HR? Do you feel comfortable reporting it to HR? Sadly, I only have a bit of advice, which is, if there's any way that you can look for something else or get away from that organization that will also tolerate that kind of bullying and abuse in the workplace, the only advice I have, and it's not a great piece of advice, is to actually look for something else and get out of there as soon as possible, because the culture 9 times out of 10 will not change.
Yes.
And that's and that is a bit why I did what I did with that second experience of it that I talked about. But I've done a lot of research as well and realised that a lot of those that are dishing out the bullying and abuse in the workplace are also very high on the scale for narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. And they're very, very good at being Jekyll and Hyde and pulling the wool over everybody's eyes and making out they're all charming and they're all great. But to those that they know that they can target, that they sense that there's a certain vulnerability about them, and that's certainly a lot of us that are neurodivergent, we're far more likely to be targeted by bullying and abuse at the hands of these narcissists and those with even full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And it's certainly something that I've looked into a lot. And I think we're then, in turn, we're also more likely to experience significant levels of imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Something else that I also talk about a lot within the realms of everything that I do.
Absolutely. Lisa, I've had a blast and it's been super fast. It's not fair. I think time goes faster as soon as I hit the record button on these things. But before we finish up, is there any final words that you'd like to share with anyone, whether they're neurodivergent, entering the industry, anything at all that you'd like to put out there?
Absolutely. So one of the key things for me is fortune favors the bold. So if you see an opportunity, if you want to get introduced to a certain person that you look up to and admire within the cybersecurity industry, or if you just need a bit of support and some help, where fortune favors the bold, reach out, message that person. Sort of don't feel that we're in this sort of, closed bubble. We're all here to help, and we all want to, do as much as we can to attract more people into the cybersecurity industry. So, don't be afraid to, make fortune favors the bold your mantra, and don't underestimate the importance of mentors. I've had some incredible mentors over the years, and having one that can really help and support you, especially through any of those uncertain times, is definitely worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of mentoring programs out there. I
Yeah.
love mentoring as well. I know it's a passion both of us share. So there's, go even just simply Google it in the industry and you'll come up with at least a dozen really high rated mentoring programs that you can get involved in. And if there's just a specific person that you really, really like, ask them if they'll mentor you. What's the worst they can say? No. And if you ask them in writing, at least you don't have to face them while they say no.
Absolutely. Fortune favors the bold, for sure. That's what I live by.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.